Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight I want to welcome Byron, Boldt, and John the Music Nut to the show. We are going to take a look at the 90s band Cry of Love. They put out 2 albums and then disappeared, but tonight they're back and we're going to check it out. So let's get started right after this.
Blues music was always folk music. It was handed down from generation to generation.
Just from dude to dude.
Yeah, and you took what you wanted to take and made it yours. And rock and roll, as they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and it's the same thing with rock and roll. It's been around quite a long time. So you just pick what you can pick, and what really means a lot to you stays with you, and what doesn't filters out, and you just make it yours. And if you're passionate about it, it'll be real.
Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and I want to welcome John the Music Nut and Byron Boldt here tonight. And tonight we are looking at the 90s band Cry of Love. Now, this is one of those shows where I this was presented to me by John and Byron because I really had not ever really heard of the band. Well, I can't say that. I heard the band Cry of Love back in the day, but it's one of those bands that came out in the 90s, kind of disappeared, and you never heard of them again. But they did get some airplay back in the day. I mean, I don't know. It's one of those bands that are kind of forgotten. And if anybody's following this show, you know we'd love to talk about bands that no one talks about. So tonight, it's Cry of Love's turn. So basically, this is a band that they were from like Raleigh, North Carolina. They formed in like 1989. Their debut album, Brother, here, I'll throw up the graphic for the hell of it, came out in 1993. Now, this, gentleman, is the record. I remember that cover because when you guys talked about it and said, oh, let's do this, let's talk about this, I went,
Right.
All right, game on. So there's the CD. And then they put out a second album in 1997, which no one knows about. This you can buy all day for little money.
True.
This CD you can't buy all day for little money. This one costs a little bit more. But we're going to take a look at both records because, well, first of all, I want to say I've been listening to these all week, and I hadn't listened to anything for a long time, or if any. Okay. And I must say, holy mackerel, this band is hot. I'm just saying,
definitely
hot stuff. But it's kind of an interesting thing because they put out that first album. They toured for 17 months nonstop. Now I'm going to throw this out to the panel here. Did anybody see them back in the day when they were out? Okay.
No,
I may have seen, apparently, I believe the drummer and the bass player toured with Chris Duarte for a while, who I've seen a bunch of times. So I may have seen a couple of those guys with Duarte at once.
Okay. So. But anyway, they toured for like 17 months, and frontman Kelly Holland quit the band. He couldn't handle all the grueling road life that they had started. So he quit. They didn't put out another album until 1997, and they hired ex-Lynch Mob and current Warrant singer Rob Mason for vocals. Now, I must say, Rob, I'm just jumping around a little bit on here, but this is what we do on this show. You listen to Rob's work on here, holy crap. He sounds every bit as good as Kelly does. And maybe some people might go, well, Grant, that might not be quite right. But
he sounds good, I think.
I think he sounds great.
His voice is a little grittier, I think, than Kelly's.
Right. But hey.
It's good. Anyway.
But my God, the guitar player on here, what?
Yeah.
Hardly Freed.
Yeah.
Talents.
Yeah.
Talk about talent. And I have to say, I don't want to go in too much because we're going to go around and talk about the records. But the guitar playing on this record, holy mackerel.
Both of them.
Well, both of them, but even on this one.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like on fire. And you know what's funny, gentlemen, is that I never hear anybody talk about this guy as a player, but my God, he should get more notoriety. And of course, we're going to give him some notoriety tonight. But my God, what a player! So what we're going to do is just go around and talk about the records. Let's start out with the first album from 1993. I'm just going to go clockwise, and I'll just throw it over to Byron, then we'll go over to John. So Byron, let's start out. Let's just talk about that first album real quick. What's your thoughts on that record? And what we'll do, like we always do, everybody's got me reviewing records and giving like scores out of 10. Normally I do 1 to 5, but I'm a convert. Let's go, out of 10. So we'll do an average. We'll get everybody's review and we'll do an average of it. So Byron, let's throw it out to you.
Sure.
Out to you. What's your whole thoughts on this record and any particular tracks you like? The routine.
Yeah. I'm going to throw out a couple little bits of information prior to the album because, like you had mentioned, Audley Freed, he played with the Black Crowes for a while, and then. Now, I guess he and the bass player, who I guess also played with Skynyrd for a while, are playing with Sheryl Crow.
Yep.
So all these guys went on to play with major artists. These guys are just top-notch players. So, I'm not surprised by that at all.
Yeah, and so to talk about this first album, Brother, it came out in May of '93. When that album first came out, the first thing I think I heard was Peace Pipe. And I don't know, I don't hear it now, but when I first heard that song, I thought, wow, this sounds like Bad Company.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily hear that as much now, but that's what stuck out to me is I thought, wow, this sounds like Bad Company.
I didn't hear that at all. I hear a lot of other things on this record, but I did not hear Bad Company.
Well, yeah, except I don't hear that so much now. But back then, that's what just jumped right out at me. So when I hear this album or either of the albums, I'm thinking a little bit of it, a little bit of this and that. But I'm thinking some Badlands. I'm thinking Bad Company, Black Crowes, a little bit of Skynyrd, maybe some Free, maybe a little Humble Pie.
Don't forget Billy Squier.
You think his voice sounds like Billy Squier?
Kelly sounds a lot like Billy Squier to me.
I hadn't put that together, but yeah, I think you're probably right there because he's got that higher pitched voice like Billy's got. We can hit those higher notes.
But not only that, but of course, you cannot not discuss the Hendrix reference here. Yes. I mean, not only is the name of Hendrix, not only is the name of the record a Hendrix record, but his guitar playing, but he's just not a Hendrix imitator. You could almost throw Robin Trower in there because he to me he sounds more like Robin Trower than he does Jimmy. But Robin, all those guys love Jimmy, so it's just
right.
Right. But there's so many influences on this record. But anyway, go ahead. Brian.
Yeah, that's one of my notes here. Is that I was going to be mentioning Hendrix and Trower a lot tonight. So anyway, if we get into this first album, like I said, Peace Pipe was the first thing I remember hearing, and I loved it. And that was apparently hit the mainstream rock #1. So it got a lot of airplay on the radio. Except that sounded, like I said, it sounded like Bad Company. It reminds me a little bit of Rock Steady, the guitar riff on that. But anyway, that's like toward the end of the album. But the first song, Highway Jones, that was a great song. It's real fast and funky. Pretty As You Please. It's got kind of a Hendrix introduction and a great solo. Okay, so the next song, Bad Thing. That was #2 on the mainstream rock charts. To me, that song sounds like Some Kind of Wonderful by Grand Funk. I don't know if anybody else agrees with
it. Does.
Yes.
With that bass line.
Yeah.
Let's leave it like there's a lot of influences in this band.
I hadn't even mentioned Grand Funk, and there it is. Yeah. Totally sounds like Grand Funk. Next song, Too Cold in the Winter. That was 13 on the U.S. mainstream charts. Kind of a quiet bluesy verses with this real heavy chorus. It's great. Mm-hmm. Hand Me Down, I think, is like a slower Skynyrd type song.
Yep.
Gotta Love Me. Okay, that song It's funky and heavy. And I tell you, I think that's his best vocal performance on the album. He just really tears it up on that vocally. Carnival I thought was all right. It reminded me of something, but I couldn't put my finger on it. But okay, Drive It Home totally sounds like Mr. Big by Free.
Great analogy. Wow.
Wow, Byron, look at you pulling. Look at you.
Yeah, total Mr. Big bass line to it. And he said Peace Pipe we've talked about. And then the last song, Saving Grace, it reminds me of Leonard Skinner, I Need You. Got kind of a slower southern sound to it. I'm going to give this album a 9.
Oh, all right.
So,
holy mackerel! So you like this record?
Oh, this album is.
Well, let me ask you this real quick: had
maybe
you heard
even a 10? I don't know.
But were you? I mean, had you? Okay. Did this?
I bought this
by doing this show. Did this reintroduce you to the band? Did you know them back in the 90s?
Yeah. No, when this first came out, like I said, Peace Pipe, I heard that and I was like, wow. And then they played here on the radio. Maybe I'm pretty sure I remember hearing Bad Thing and I think Highway Jones.
Okay.
And maybe one other. So we got quite a bit of airplay, and I think this was a promo copy because it's got the cut hole. I got this real early. When it first came out, I got this.
Are they all promos? Because mine's got a cut too.
Mine doesn't have a cut.
I think it sold pretty well. But
well, I know, but how did you get a promo? See, there's the front of the CD, but
yeah, mine's the same.
Anything. Okay.
I got a hype sticker on mine too.
No hype on mine. No hype.
So I've had this album for 30 years and I've always loved it. I don't listen to it a ton anymore because you just can't go back and listen to everything, but I always enjoy it. So
you're gonna go a 9, or are you doing a 10?
I'm gonna go a 9.
Okay.
There's one or two things that aren't perfect on here, but it's pretty damn close.
I don't know. I
don't give out a lot of 10s or 5s. So
all right. I think that's fair. Let's throw it over to John. John, what's your thoughts on this one?
A lot of my sentiments echo Byron's. Back in the glory days of AOR, you heard these guys steady for about a year. You heard Peace Pipe, Bad Thing all the time.
Like on classic rock radio, or where were you hearing it? Because it wouldn't have been
new rock. It was new rock when I was here.
Well, yeah, but you could.
Rock 107.
Okay.
Scranton.
But
they played classic rock, but back then they were playing songs by newer artists that also rock.
Right.
That's why I always say the glory days when AOR would still play new songs by established artists and play great rock songs by new artists. You heard this a lot for about a year, particularly the two big singles, Peace Pipe and Bad Thing, especially Peace Pipe. Peace Pipe was all over AOR radio then. And I mean, and it hasn't aged at all. It is a fantastic song.
Excellent point.
Yes. And I mean, we're talking about, it has the sound of a classic 70s album, the way it's recorded. You can hear all the instruments very clearly, particularly the bass, which is very refreshing because in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, a lot of times you didn't hear that bass up front. On here you do. And the recording was wonderfully done. The songs are, as Byron said, nearly all of them are great. I mean, and Audley Freed, he co-wrote he had a hand in writing every song on here. I mean, he's a wicked guitar player, but a talent. I mean, we've talked about how he was in the Black Crowes. He was on the Lions album. He was part of the original Trigger Hippie. And I doing research here, I'm thinking to myself, I've seen him a few times.
Oh,
because I have, because I saw Trigger Hippie twice in the mid 2010s. I've seen Sheryl Crow over the last several years a couple times. He's been like, I never saw Cry of Love. I saw Black Crowes in '97. He was there then. So yeah, I've seen Audley Freed many times, but I just didn't realize it until I was
who he was
doing some homework on here. But The
But
songs
Nose
here, though,
Band, though, let me ask you this real quick before you go,
Sure.
John. He doesn't play when you saw him live. The way he plays on this record, he didn't play anything like that. He probably with
not
Sheryl Crow, he's a lot more reserved and
yeah.
yeah, I would
From what I
imagine.
remember, he was more reserved.
But what a brilliant player! Holy crap!
Absolutely.
Like I said,
And
this record, the guitar on this record just smokes.
You're getting ahead of yourself.
I'm just throwing it. I'm throwing it out to the people. I'm letting the people know
Yeah.
well, we're going to
I-
get
you know,
to it. But it
I
does
didn't
smoke.
mention it
Both
either.
records.
I really didn't discuss that. I'm going to steal your thunder, John. But yeah,
it's all good.
the solos on
All
that
about-
first album.
Mhm.
I mean, like you were saying, is some Hendrix and Trower. That's his tone is like that, but he's playing like a modern player as far as his runs and stuff. Where Hendrix and Trower don't play those speedy runs like he does. It's just
Right.
Good point.
great,
Good
man.
point.
It's got a
Well
little wah-wah in this sound, but he
Yeah.
doesn't overdo it. Not to the point where it's his trademark. You know, he's got a lot of things going on here. You know, you know what else I like on here? How it gives a classic, like a classic '70s album. The use of the fade outs and the fade ins. You rarely hear a fade in, but the fade in to Too Cold in the Winter is excellent. You never hear those fade ins. They left a mess up at the beginning of that thing,
Yeah.
that drum part at the beginning,
Yeah.
and then he messes up. They left it right on the album.
Yeah.
So just
I like
between that and the fade outs and the fade ins, it has this very loose feel about it.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, it doesn't but yet recorded very well. As far as the songs, I echo Byron's sentiments here. I like nearly everything on here. I really like Drive It Home a lot. The singles, of course, they're all fantastic. If I was to pick a fourth single off this album, it'd probably be Gotta Love Me. That song I think could have made a lot of waves on AOR as well.
Well, his vocals are great on that song.
It is. And the thing about Kelly Holland, his vocals, he's great vocals, but he's got a lot of swagger. He's got a lot of confidence on here. When we get to the next record, I don't hear that as much with Robert Mason, as talented as he is. But here they got this swing and he's got this swagger about him. That's what you need in a band like a classic 4-piece band. You need a guy who can sing and a guy who can sell it, you know, and Kelly Holland absolutely does it on here. But as far as the songs, yeah, I mean, Hand Me Down, I like it. That sounds a lot like Bad Company to me.
Okay.
I believe, yeah, that's very Bad Company. Carnival is really cool. Saving Grace, the closer, that's like the only thing close to a slow song on the album, but it ends the album very well. This, I read, only sold 200,000 copies. I'm shocked for how much AOR play it got. And I don't even know if it ever charted on the top 200 Billboard charts.
Well, if you think about it, 200,000 is not
It's not bad. No.
very.
It's not
well, it's
bad,
not
but-
bad, but it's not great either.
Yeah, and I another thing I read, they opened for Robert Plant, Aerosmith, and ZZ Top on various tours while they were out there. So think about that. They're out there with Aerosmith for Get a Grip, which I'm not a crazy fan. I'm not a fan of that album, but it sold several million copies. Robert Plant, I think, was doing Manic Nirvana at that point. That was still a big seller for him.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, not Manic Nirvana. Ooh, I forget what the next album. Fate of Nations, maybe.
Yeah,
might have been
that sounds
Yeah.
about right.
good album.
Yeah,
No,
but
I think
still.
you're about right.
Yeah, Fate of
Yeah.
Nations.
And ZZ Top. I mean, they would have been doing Antenna. Okay, that wasn't selling like their '80s albums did, but I mean, they're still a big draw at this point.
Still, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm surprised it didn't. I mean, they did get the, album-oriented rock loved them, but I thought it would. Maybe they just have to do they got to count those albums again. Maybe this did come closer to gold than what we see out there on the web. But this bad boy, yeah,
You
I
like
give
it?
I like it a lot. I give it a 9.
Okay. All right. Well, excellent review, both of you,
Thank you.
gentlemen. I appreciate it. Yeah, I had not heard this record prior to us putting the show on. And like I said, on this show, I like to throw out these bands that no one talks about. I mean, yeah, I talk about some bands people talk about, whatever. I got to get some viewers. But this is one of those bands kind of forgotten. Yeah. And this was what, 1993? They recorded this November of 92. This is early 90s. And the thing about this record that really I was just really taken by it was the sound quality of this record. Yeah. Not only is it's very dry sounding. So if anybody's ever heard Matthew's Sweet Girlfriend, it's along those lines. There is no reverb on this record at all. Nope. It sounds like you play it through your speakers and it's just like Cry of Love are right there in the room with you.
Yep.
It's a wonderful recording. It was produced by John Custer. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with his producing body of work, but I'm going to click on his name. I'm not either. But he's like from North Carolina, I think. He's from that area. But I don't really see anything on here that really signifies what else he's really done. Cry of Love seems to be his,
his bread and butter.
His bread and butter. But I think what he did on this record is, I'll take it. I think it's great. But I'm totally captivated. Now, I want to say I've heard other records that have had better songs. But I think the production, the guitar playing, the vocals, the bass playing, Byron, that you mentioned, holy mackerel. What a great record. This is one of those records that I must say I'm surprised I hadn't heard it. But here we go. This is what it's about. We're hearing it right now. And there's Ernesto. There he is. I knew he'd be here eventually.
Hi, Ernesto.
But if you look at the reviews, All Music gave it 4 out of 5. Most of the reviews I see, there's one I got a 3.5 out of 4. 3 out of 5. I mean, it gets good reviews. No one's giving this a bad review. It's just too bad that it never really took off, So like you said, you like Jimmy, you like Bad Company, you like Billy Squire, you like Leonard Skinner. It's like this band has all these influences and they just jumble them up and just kind of go for it. But the Kelly, the singer, holy crap, he's great. And I don't know what his whole life history was. I know that he passed away in, what was it, 2014, somewhere around in there.
Too bad.
Wow. It's sad, but man. But he wasn't made for the road. Like I said, they were out for 17 months. He couldn't handle it, got out of the band. That kind of put a hiatus to the band until 97. But I would highly recommend it. And like you gentlemen, I would give this, you both gave it a 9. I'd probably give it I'm thinking I'd probably give it a solid 8.
Okay.
I think, to be quite honest, we're going to talk about this record, but I actually think that the songwriting, you think about that sophomore slump thing, and you do not have the sophomore slump on this record. Got a different singer, but we'll get to that. I'm jumping ahead. I get all excited, it's just what it is. Yeah. So I'm going to give it an 8. And so I don't know if there's anybody out there that's heard this record, but if you want to put your ratings into the comment in the chat, we will compile it all real quick. So if you do have an opinion on it, please put it in there real quick so we can compile it. So we got a 9, a 9, and an 8. And let's see if anybody else comes in. And I don't know. Ernesto, you've had to heard this record. God knows you have it on 8-track. And DC Tune Time, he's got to hunt his Cry of Love albums, but I know he's heard it. So I'm just curious.
You wonder, so this was 93, right? So this was like the prime time for grunge.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking that too.
metal
This
was
is not grunge.
right.
at all.
And metal was kind of dying, except for the new thrash metal was getting popular. So this kind of didn't really fit in with what was trendy, but it was good because it was old school, you know. So
DC, give us your rating. You know this record. I will compile it with it. I know you say they're both fantastic, but what would you rate this record? Right, Ernesto's never heard it. Of course he hadn't. He's too busy buying Cat Stevens 8
not on
track.
8-track. That's why.
That's why.
Or
When the
Funkadelic.
8-track era went out, Ernesto threw in the towel. He doesn't have anything post what? 1982, 1980. Well, they're kind of blues based. See, Ernesto, you came in late.
Yeah.
So
they're southern rock based, like the Black Crows.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Black Crows, but heavier, I think.
You know what they sound like?
The Black Crows.
Go ahead.
They sounded more like Bad Company than the version of Bad Company that was out at that point.
Yeah.
Because at that point you had Brian Howe Bad Company, and that's different than Paul Rogers Bad Company. Paul Rogers was more
bluesy,
down to earth, bluesy, you know, whereas Brian Howe, it was more like AOR, more like Foreigner.
Right.
It's kind of like that. Not to discredit Brian Howe. I mean,
no,
I like those albums too. Yeah.
Oh,
I like those albums too, but I like the Rogers albums more.
Okay, first time he's going to give it an 8. All right. And a
Thank
9,
you.
9 or well, I'm going to take that 9.5 for the second one. That's how we roll around here. So we got another 8. Anybody else want to throw a rating in while we're here? Because we're going to go till 9 because I have another premiere because I've got that interview from the band Off Broadway. So okay. Songs, vocals, guitar, pure awesome throwback to classic 70s rock.
Yep.
Yes. Thanks for the recap. Ernesto, you're just going to have to go back in time and listen. So yeah, the songs, yes. And think about it. This is the grunge era. This would not fit in there at all, which I'm surprised. But think about it. Like in the alternative stations that were playing grunge back in the day, they weren't playing. I'm not even sure who was playing this back in the day on the radio. I don't think I ever heard it. I don't know.
I don't think I heard anything off the second album on the radio.
I didn't
that
either.
was 97. Well, we're going to look at that. All right, let's do a calculation. Well, obviously this is going to be really good. Well, out of everybody's all of our scores, 2 9s and 2 8s, we've got an 8.5. So there you go. Like I said, I love this record. It's not, and like I said, it's not so much the songwriting. It is the band just actually kicks proverbial. Yes. And the sound of the record is, I would say, if any of you people listening here and our audio files, no one mentions this record. It absolutely sounds stunning. I was really surprised how well it sounds. Because, you're talking 93, you're starting to get into loudness wars. This is absolutely beautiful sounding. Highly recommend it. I don't think this record ever came out on vinyl, but it's fine. The CD sounds great. All right. So there we go, an 8.5. Let's talk a little bit about that second album. We like the first album. I've got all these graphics. Grant, get these graphics off the screen, for God's sakes. Damn professional you are. Hold on, kids. I got to get my notes up. Well, I don't think I really have much. Now, when I'm doing my research on these records, you can find information about this first album, but by God, try to find some information on this.
That's true.
This came out and went to the oblivion, But all I can say is, for this record, there's no information. All I can tell you is that we still have Oddly Freed on here, still playing guitar because I think he really is the sound of the band. Because you listen to this record, you listen to the first record, he is such a dominant force that you obviously know this is Cry of Love. But by this time, Kelly's out of the band. Like I said, after 17 months, he said, I'm done. So they hired who did they hire? I forget. They hired, ex-Lynch Mob and Warrant singer Robert Mason. Now, Robert has a very similar tonality that Kelly does, I think. I think he fits right in just fine. Me personally. I don't know.
He doesn't have that Billy Squier edge, though. I think
no, but he still fits. They still sound like Cry of Love.
Yep.
But I think, well, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to throw it over to you guys. So, Byron, go ahead. And what's your thoughts on this second album?
Yeah. When this came out, I heard they had a new singer, which kind of like shit. I was a little disappointed. And I think a friend of mine had it, and I think we listened to it over at his house once, and I think I just kind of forgot about it after that. I never owned it, and I was a little disappointed because it was a new singer. But since we decided to do this show, I thought, well, I better check this out, And I've listened to it, at least half a dozen times in the last month. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, shit, I should have bought this a long time ago.
Well, you never saw it.
Well, that's the thing. I never see it. So I've just been Spotifying it. So I would say, I guess I liked Kelly Holland a little bit better. Nothing wrong with Robert Mason at all, but I just Kelly Holland was the guy for me in this band, but he quit. So I would say this album, I'm more interested in the guitar playing than the first album. I was more interested, I think, in the singing. This album, I think the guitar playing shines even more than on the first album. So, but it starts out with Empty Castle, which I really like that. And to me, that sounds like Badlands, really, in my opinion. And he's got this nice Crybaby solo. Really like that. The next song, Hung Out to Dry, it's kind of a slower, real moody, kind of dark song, which is not too bad. But the next song, Sugarcane, which I think that's the hit of the album. Wasn't a really big hit, though. It only got to 22 on the mainstream charts. But that is really upbeat, catchy. I really like that song. Fire in the Dry Grass, it's got this slow acoustic guitar introduction. Then it kind of goes into this real slow, heavy guitar riff. But I like that track. But the next song, Georgia Pine, it's real fast and funky. It's got a great solo in it. Like I said, his guitar soloing is just what really stands out on this album. Warm River Pearls next. That's kind of got this real slow, kind of psychedelic verses. It reminds me a little bit of like Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden. How those verses are.
Yeah.
Sweet Mary's Gone. Okay, now this song I really like. It's bluesy, funky, and I think he sounds like Lenny Kravitz on this. And it's got this song is just full of crybaby guitar playing. I really like that a lot. Revelations next. Okay, this may be the best song on the album, I think. It's just fast and funky. It's got this really killer guitar solo. Bring Me My Burden. It's a real slow ballad with Fender Rhodes. I don't know that they've really had any of that on any of the other tracks on the albums.
No, I don't think
I haven't really noticed much keyboard at all. Okay, the next song, Sunday Morning Flood. This is probably the guitar extravaganza on the album. I think it's kind of this heavy mid-tempo track. Sounds very Robin Trower. And then has this great heavy Trower type solo, but then it gets real quiet like Stevie Ray when he would get real quiet and play just real clean stuff, real slow. It kind of breaks into that for a while. And then it just slowly builds up at the end, it's got this huge climax that sounds totally like Hendrix, in my opinion. Go ahead.
You know what? I kept thinking Stevie Ray Vaughan too, and I didn't mention that, but I do hear that on here.
Yeah, especially on that song.
Yeah,
he's
excellent. Yeah,
he's tapping Trower to begin that song,
Mhm.
then Stevie Ray, and then Hendrix. It's a great song. It's the tour de force guitar song on the album.
like I said, this band is like a melting pot of influences.
Yeah,
you know, but all good influences, you know, and everything that they play is all well executed. And I do want to say, I looked this up because I wasn't sure, because, you know, I'm blind, but this was produced too by John Custer too. He produced this same record. I thought that they did sound about the same. I think the production on here is a little cleaner, but his definite producer stamp is on here. So anyway, sorry, Byron, keep
that's
going.
all right. Then we got Diamond and Debris, which I think just kind of a straight ahead rock song. Nothing special really about it. Hung Out Redux. That's like it's only about a little over a minute long. It's more of I'd say it's like a spacey Hendrix instrumental.
Right.
Something like off of like Axel's Bold as Love, that kind of a thing.
Oh yeah.
And then the last song, Garden of Memories, it's a real slow psychedelic song. Kind of it's got that Soundgarden again, Black Hole Sun kind of feel. So they've added a little bit of the psych sounding instrumentation to this album, I thought.
Byron sounds like Armando. What are you talking about, Ernesto? What do you mean? What are you?
You're talking the astute analysis. I agree with that.
Yes, I agree.
Very Armando-like in his analysis on this.
Yeah.
Very Armando-like in his.
And Armando's very excellent analysis, I think.
Yeah.
No.
It's a compliment.
Anyway, that's the
Yeah,
whole
that's a
album right
compliment.
there.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
What would you? How would you rate this one compared to the other one?
I don't like it as well as the first album. And it may be because I don't have 30 years of familiarity with it. I only have like 2 months worth.
Okay.
Can I give it a 7.5, or do I got to round that to an even?
No, you can. I can. With the technology I have on my end, Byron, you can do a 7.35 if you want.
7.5.
Okay.
Or you could give it a 9.9 like Armando.
And so you want a 7.5?
7.5.
All right, excellent. Got you down. I appreciate that. Excellent review. Let's pop it over to John the Music Nut and see what he thinks about it. John, what's your thoughts on this one?
Okay, Byron actually has more experience with this album than I did. He and I were talking about this. Emailing each other before we reached out to you. I had said, they had a second album. I said that, right, Byron?
Yeah, you should know they had a second album.
I know they had a second album.
Nobody does.
Well, people know now, for God's sakes. That's how we roll on this channel. We're going to talk about both tonight, by golly. Go ahead.
We will. Now, when I listen to this, and full disclosure, the CD's still in the mail. I ordered it a few weeks ago, but it's coming from Europe. And I guess Europe.
It's hard to find.
Is it?
I couldn't find it in the States.
Yeah, I probably bought the last one.
Not at a reasonable price, anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's on its way, but I did listen to it on Spotify a few times.
Okay.
But I mean, Byron summed this up a lot the way I was thinking. I know he has a higher opinion of it. Yes, the guitars are carrying this album. The production isn't as dry as the first one. If anything, it's louder and dirtier, but not loud to the point that it's discouraging.
Right.
You know, like a lot. It's not a loudness wars album. It's just you really hear Audley Freed's guitar higher in the mix than you do the rest of the instruments. So even though you have you still have John Custer here as producer. Robert Mason, I think, does a good job. I don't think he's not quite Kelly Holland. I don't think he fits in quite as well, but it still works for the album. He doesn't sound too much different. Oh, Well, now I know what to look forward to.
That's what it looks like if you ever get it.
Oh, it's coming. They
Oh,
told me
I know. Oh, I
it's
know.
shipped. It just ain't here yet.
It's staying here. There it is.
It's just ain't here yet. There
It'll
we
get
go. Oh yeah. So now some of these songs are very upbeat and up tempo, and there's some songs on here that are very slow and bluesy.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I thought about this, the more it reminds me a little bit in scope of this album by the Black Crowes called Three Snakes and One Charm.
Okay.
Now, there's a lot of stuff on here that's very R&B, but there's a lot of stuff that's slower. And I'm wondering, when Cry of Love broke up, if the Black Crowes were listening to Diamonds and Debris and thinking, oh, he'd be a good fit for us. Like, because at that point, they went through a few guitar players there, but I don't know if it was Mark Ford or who it would have been in the late 90s. But he came in for a few for a few years after Cry of Love broke up, and oddly recorded Lions with the Black Crowes. So it has a bit of that feel, in my opinion. But as far as the songs go, Empty Castle, it's a great opener. I love the wah-wah guitar on there. The guitar influences that you've all been talking about, I definitely agree with that. Hung Out to Dry, it's slower. I think the solo's great, but it's taken away some of the momentum. Now, Sugarcane, it went to number 22 on AOR. I honestly can't remember it being played back then.
No.
I mean, maybe I just missed it. Maybe they played it a couple times, and
I hadn't heard any of it. So
yeah,
I bought it. I'd never seen this before in my life. So
yeah, but Sugarcane, I mean, it should have been the thing. It was the single, and it should have been. It was very catchy.
Mm-hmm.
It would have fit in perfect on the first album, Brother, to me. Fire in the Grass, that's got a cool groove to it. Georgia Pine, that's an excellent track. Yeah. Again, another upbeat track I think works very well. Excuse me. And then from here, I think it gets really slow. Like, it's almost like the hangover after the party.
Right.
It's like Brother is the party, and a lot of Diamonds and Debris is the hangover. The playing is great, but the songs are kind of very mid-tempo, and then there'll be a song that'll start out rocking, and it'll go mid-tempo, and we'll get into that. Sweet Mary's Gone. It's a slow blues rock, cool riff. It's okay, but Revelations, that kicks ass. That, like you, Byron, that might be my favorite song on the album. Bring Me My Burden, again, it's like slow and contemplative. Sunday Morning Flood, that opening part with Robin Trower, it sounds a lot like Confess at Midnight to me.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I'm like, oh, this is like a rewrite of Confess at Midnight. This kicks ass. Yeah. Diamonds and Debris, the title song, again, it's like mid-tempo blues rock. I mean, it's okay. And Hunt Out Redo, it's just an instrumental. And then Garner Memories, they wanted to have something slow and contemplative at the end. I mean, it's a cool closer. But there are some cool tunes on here. I like Empty Castles, Sugarcane, Georgia Pine, Revelations a lot. Maybe over time I give it a little higher rating, but right now I give it a 6.
Holy crap! Okay.
And that's because the guitar playing and the performance is being so
a 6,
strong.
Correct?
6.
Okay. All right. Well, kids, well, thank you, John. That was a good review. Excellent.
Thank you.
I really can't top anything that you and Byron have said already. Good analogy, John. There you go. Ernesto, he's a big fan of you. You know that, right? Anyway. What was that?
I think that was me moving my laptop a little bit.
Oh, I thought maybe you were having an earthquake.
No.
I like this album better than the other album, and I gave the other album, what did I give it, an 8?
An 8.
I would give this a 9.
Wow.
Now I think the songwriting's better on here. The vocals don't bother me. I think the guy from Warrant, he just makes I think it's a fine transition. They didn't skip a beat. And I think the guitar on this record, I think on Diamonds and Debris, is even better than what came before. I think the songwriting's better. The band's tight. Yeah, maybe it doesn't quite have that intimate sound like that first record, but I think it's a stronger record. I don't know why I think that. Gas Mask, these guys are a good, bad company. Yeah, well, kind of. Well, like we were talking about that, Gas Masks. These guys are a hodgepodge of, Leonard Skinner, Jimmy Hen, the list is long, and they just kind of come together and they make it all work. But this record, I've never seen it before. I'm glad I finally heard it before I kicked the bucket. This was a great topic. And, if we can give more love to this band and open it up just a couple of people, that's all it's about to me. So I'm comfortable giving this a 9. Oh. I think I love it. Either one. I can take either one. No problems. I'm just curious. DC, what would you rate this again? What did you say you'd give this? I have to go backwards.
I believe DC
9.5
likes this a little more.
Yeah. Anybody else that's here in the chat, have you heard this record? Give us your if you've heard it, write a little comment, give your rating here, and we'll compile it. And there's DC, a 9 or 9.5. DC, I'm going to go with 9.5 on this. So if you've heard it, and if you have a rating, jot it down here in the comments, and we'll put it within our average. But I like it. I wish I could complain about it, but it's just one of those records that is lost to it's lost in the 90s somewhere,
And I think what would hurt that record too is it took them 4 years to put that out. Yeah. And when you
people forgot who they were.
Right. I mean, you could have like 2 huge rock radio hits, but you gotta strike while the iron is hot, put something out at least within 2 years. By the time 4 years goes by, it's gonna be like, oh yeah, I remember that band. Oh, they have another album. Oh, like me. I mean, I didn't even know there was a second album until Byron and I talked about it.
All right, so Gas Mask gives an 8.5. Excellent. See, that's not bad at all. Stuart, you never heard of him. Well, if you like what we are reviewing in this show, you might be turned on to him, because holy crap, the guitar on this record is just absolutely great. DC hadn't heard it in years. My oldest iPod has some of the songs from this second album. Songs come up on shuffle play. Your oldest iPod has some of this on there. I love that.
Awesome.
Kind of like the band Archangel.
Yeah. Archangels.
Good band.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too.
They're showing them.
I've never heard Archangel.
Oh, Archangels. One album.
What?
It was self-titled.
What year?
92. Oh, they had like 4 AOR hits. They had 4 big AOR hits.
Byron's getting up. He's going to go pull it.
Oh, yeah. He loves them too.
I've never heard of them.
Oh, yeah. They were Archangels.
Stuart, check it out. I swear to God.
There it is.
Never seen that. I've never seen that before.
It's the bass player and drummer from Double Trouble.
Yep.
Okay.
Along with
Charlie Sexton.
And
Doyle Bromhall
Jr. The third or second or junior. Yeah. The second.
Right.
Yeah. Great album.
Mm-hmm.
Great album.
Very good album.
Well, Gas Mask, you know Archangel? Who knows Archangel in the chat? Oh,
Angels.
Ernesto knows him. What is it?
It's Archangel.
Nationalism.
Archangels.
Yeah, Archangel was a local band from near my home in the 80s.
I've never heard of them. I live in a very sheltered region. We don't, hear anybody.
Yeah, that Archangel's album is very good. I gotta give that another listen. It's been a long time.
That's great.
Maybe we should do a show on that.
It's one album.
It's one album, but I mean,
all right.
I mean, there's a lot.
Do you want to do a show? We'll. Hey, I've never heard it.
Yeah, you should. You need to hear it.
Well,
20 Ways to Fall. So many great songs on there.
Didn't the Double Trouble guys do some work with Malcolm Milligan too? Under Double, I think they were called Double Trouble. Malcolm Milligan, the Malcolm Milligan?
I'm not sure, Byron. I gotta look that up.
Yeah, because I think I saw them. I saw them play at a blues festival one time with Malfred Milligan or something like that, and it was the Double Trouble guys backing them up, and I don't know who was on guitar.
Ernesto likes that album.
Yeah, that album kicks ass.
All right, but what would you? Well, we're on a tangent again, but that's all right.
And Charlie Sexton, tell you his talent. He's been playing with Bob Dylan for a long time.
Yeah, I remember Charlie Sexton's solo album back in the 80s.
So Lonely was the hit.
Yeah, when Doyle Bramall's played with Clapton for a long time. I don't know if he's still there, but he did.
Right.
He's got some solo albums, which are really good.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, let's do our average. I've taken everybody's score. And, well, it's not an 8.5, but everybody combined, it's an 8.1. So that's not bad at all. I mean, I could easily recommend either one of these records. But I'll be honest, in my time that I go out a lot and I look at the bins. I do a lot. I go hunting in the wild. I have never seen this in years, if ever. Well, I probably saw it in the 90s, but I have not seen it lately. And this I've never seen before.
Yeah,
I've never seen it. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
Ernesto, you gave us a show.
Yeah. Yeah, you gave us a show. Sorry, I just wanted to see if there's a comparison between them. Oh, we should do a New England spotlight.
Not as guitar heavy, really.
Well, there is a New England show coming up on my channel.
New England?
Yeah.
That Paul Stanley produced New England?
First album. Have you heard that record?
I have a copy of it. I'll tune in.
Or you can come on.
Well, just send me the date.
I'll send you the date. Well, Gas Mask can come on too. Have you guys heard a band called Splendor? Only 2 albums, first produced by Rundgren. What year?
I have not.
Never heard of that.
Splendor. What era was that?
Wow.
I've never heard of Splendor. Todd Rundgren produced it? I'm not even familiar with it.
No.
All right, kids. Well, we're going to have to wind this up because I have another show coming up, but it's already recorded. So what's coming on up at 9:00 is an interview with John Ivan and Jim Cunningham from the Power Pop band Off Broadway USA. So it was a great interview. It goes for about an hour and a half, but man, this band's open for Cheap Trick. They've opened for all these people. They're another band that, like I was talking, no one really knows who they are, but in Illinois, they are still a big deal. And they have 2 albums out, and I don't know, check it out. It was a great interview. I had a lot of fun. So we're going to wind this one up. I want to thank Byron Boldt, and I want to thank John the Music Nut for coming on. And we all recommend Cry of Love if you can get it. By all means.
Yep.
Check it out.
Good album.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, I got to go. So I'm going to let it go. And thanks everybody for coming in and making comments and giving your ratings. I love it. The more audience interaction we can do, the better. So, all right. On behalf of Grant's Rock Warehouse, I'm Grant. See you, Byron. Thanks, John. And we'll see you later.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Bye,
everybody.
Bye-bye.